All right, greetings everyone, and welcome to session 2 of series 2 in the School of Love called Love is Listening, broadcasting to you live from the jungles of Costa Rica. This will be the last time I am doing this. Next week I will be back in the loft after my 4-week hiatus here down in the rich coast of Costa Rica, which is what Costa Rica means, rich coast, and I've been having a rich time and sending you lots of love and sunlight and sand and so forth. So here we are to again look at the power of love in our lives. Just to recap a bit about the previous session, we saw how desire is a driving force in all of our lives. We saw how it drives us on multiple levels in multiple ways. And where does desire drive us? Well, it can drive us north or it can drive us south. It is a powerful power within each of us that is somewhat beyond our control. It can make us feel out of control, and in fact can lead us to be out of control. Why is that? And what can we do about it? Well, for the first question, why is that? Why is desire so overwhelming at times, where we might even feel a heart attract? That is an attraction of the heart to someone or something else that makes us ask questions like, am I falling in love? Can I stop myself from falling in love with this person? But we looked at how this may not be love, because love is more than a feeling. And this feeling may simply be desire that is triggered by some object, and we are having a heart attract. And we saw how the forces of love can actually be a moral force to guide us in the slippery realm of desire. That we need to work love and desire together. And let us remember where this powerful force of desire comes from. We may assume that it comes from the earth, that it comes from us, it comes from our animal instincts and urges. But the word desire or sidereal of the stars points to its origin in starry space, from the cosmos that created us. And this astral force comes from beyond, is implanted in us as part of the planet, and then wishes to reconnect us to the cosmos, to the stars, to the beyond. This is its raw intent, to come in and to return to itself. But it's being filtered through us. It is being filtered through us, and it has to respect our freedom of ego to connect to the cosmos if we choose, or if we choose not to. But ultimately, desire is the force with the potential to move us forward in our evolution toward freedom. But it requires us to master ourselves with love in order to do this in accordance with what I'm calling the planet. Also, we saw that working with love means to exercise our threefoldness. This is now getting to the second part of the question. What can we do about heart attracts? Working with love within our threefoldness to align our thoughts and our acts of will with love. And then this feeling realm that shares itself with desire will align with the loving thoughts and loving acts of will, rather than succumbing to heart attracts and falling in love with everything attractive that goes by. And I showed last time the technique of the 4 Ds of getting things done, where you can put a decision ahead of desire, instead of letting desire run the show, or lack of desire run the show. You make a decision as to what you want to do, then let desire follow to fill your sails and move you with the power of passion through the details needed, and ultimately to the delivery of the thing you initially decided to do. The 4 Ds of getting things done is a simple but powerful technique. I hope some of you have been practicing it over the last week, and I look forward to, at the end of tonight's session, to hear any anecdotal episodes of how you put this to work in your life. Because it harnesses our desire to do things that can be backed by love and live on the high road to successfully manifesting through the power of our threefoldness. And mentioning our threefoldness, let us do the threefold coherence exercise that I introduced and we've been doing, just to bring ourselves into this coherence, beginning with a hand on the heart and a hand on the belly. Just feeling this physically within yourself, but then the hands kind of as markers to the energetic qualities that are in these parts of your body, and feeling how the heart can rest upon the power of the belly center. Just feel into that resting of the heart on this powerful belly center. And allow the heart to feel some opening as it feels its grounding down upon the belly. And now as you focus on the heart, breathe as if you are breathing with your heart. Because this is actually what is meant to be done on the high road. Is we're not just breathing air, but we're breathing life. And I don't even mean just like prana or chi, but life with a capital L. We can draw in, we can attract, we can bring to us from the furthest reaches of space, the starry realm where desire comes to us. We can breathe that with our heart. So just be with that heart breathing for a moment. And now bring into mind an image, a thought, a memory of something that gives you a sense of appreciation or a sense of joy, a sense of levity, and allow that to work upon your thinking, your feeling, and your will. Allow that thought to open the heart even more, to relax the belly even more, and to build a sense of threefold coherence. And you can continue with that gesture if you wish. I was speaking of the high road, traveling the high road of desire, where we move our desire up on the high road so that our desire can move us on the high road of life. And we want to look at how love is a guiding force in doing this. So the title of the session this evening is Love is Listening. And you may be wondering about the title, Love is Listening. Does Jesse mean love is listening or love is listening? Or maybe Jesse's just playing with words again, and in the ambiguity he means both meanings. Love is listening and love is listening. We'll begin with the first nuance. Love is listening. With regard to listening to others with love, does that mean the most loving thing to do is to listen while others talk and talk and talk as some people will do, sometimes with verbal diarrhea and mental constipation, as my mother used to say about me when I was a little boy. I had verbal diarrhea and mental constipation. Is that love, to just listen to that and to let that go on? Because yes, some people really like to talk. And one of the reasons for this is that some people are what is known as verbal processors. Verbal processors. They actually need the jawbone to be going, because the jaw is like a limb. So the limb is the will. And in order for them to be thinking, they need will. So talking brings will into thinking. No jawbone going, no thinking going. Verbal processors. And in all fairness, to some extent, we all need to express and articulate ourselves verbally in order to be present. We language ourselves into existence. Our languaging really is an expression of our ego being, and it allows us to presence ourselves within the world, within society, within the presence of others. But some people are more so verbal processors. And so guess what? They need someone there to listen to them while they do their verbal processing. So in this session, we're going to look at how listening can lovingly support this in ourselves and others. But let me back up a bit and reference something from Series 1, where I made a major point about time and space. And as I pointed out, time and space are what we have to work with in the 4 dimensions. As we experience these 4 dimensions through a physical body with our physical senses. And so thus I refer to time and space as 2 of our greatest teachers. And how well we manage our time and space is one standard of measurement of how well we are doing in our evolution, or as I like to call it, our egolution. Time and space are our teachers and have something to say to us if we choose to listen. And as this title of the talk is tonight, love is listening. So are we listening to time and space? And so as awakening ego beings, we actually need to become masters of time and space. Masters of time and space. Particularly when it comes to this question of communication. And what I mean by becoming masters is that we can truly shape the nature of time and space. It is somewhat malleable. It is there for us to work with. So we can shape the nature of time and space by the way we work with it at any given moment. And I'm not just talking about the quantity of time and space, which is certainly an important factor. We need to factor in sufficient time and space to properly deal with whatever it is we're dealing with. That's just love. Love is allotting the sufficient quantity of time and space to deal with whatever we're dealing with. But I'm also talking about the quality of time and space. We need to become masters of quality of time and space. And right here, right now, you have immense power. Immense power in the realm of infinite possibilities. In the way you are presently presencing yourself in the time-space continuum. The way you are focusing your attention and responding and listening to what is coming to you from your surroundings to your center. In other words, the quality of listening you bring to your experience of time and space. And so back to my original point. Yes, you can listen more to other people and hear them talk and talk and talk. But when you learn to become more of a master of the qualities of time and space in holding time and space for other people while they talk and talk and talk. You will find the development of your listening ability will be of immense benefit to you. And we'll be talking more about that in the next session as you unpack your ability to listen and what that means in terms of access to knowledge. The next session is going to be called Love and Learning. So tonight, why and how do we want to become masters of time and space? And I'm glad you've asked that question, or questions, why and how. And the reason I'm glad is because asking questions is important and is the way to become an active listener. So this is one of the first points in loving and listening, is to learn how to be an active listener rather than a passive listener. When we are a passive listener, we let people run rampant with their words, just reporting, going on, and that can be energetically draining and unhygienic for both parties to just let that happen. But being an active listener, it means a few things. But for one thing, it means you take initiative to help the other person unpack whatever it is that wants to be unpacked. And neither of you really knows what wants to be unpacked in a conversation at the beginning of a conversation, which is why you're having a conversation, to see what wants to be unpacked. And this is what the word conversation actually means. Conversation means to turn with. Con means with, and verse is turning. So this turning with, in conversation, you turn with the other person. And asking active questions is a way to interject into the conversation and allow the conversation to turn and find the real direction it wants to roll in, which may not be what either of you thinks it is. You may think you're having a conversation, about one thing, and it's just reporting, talking, you have it all scripted and kind of think you know where it's going. But you may surprise yourself in the end when you start to work with active listening and interjecting with certain kinds of questions, that it may take a different course and unveil major things that have been waiting in the wings to be expressed, and allowing that person to presence themselves through words. And this can happen provided the conversation doesn't get derailed with communication stoppers. Communication stoppers, what are they? Well, I'm glad you're asking that question too, because it's very important, and we'll get to what communication stoppers are in a moment. But first, when it comes to asking questions, we can choose our questions skillfully. We should take a moment to choose our questions skillfully, because the question can have a big impact on where the conversation turns next. So you actually have to listen into what kind of question to interject into a conversation that will support its turning and revealing what really wants to come through. So I typically like to ask more general and open questions than specific questions, which can be overly directing. Open-ended questions allow the psyche of the other to feel into where it wants to go next in its unpacking. So for example, if you ask me, what are communication stoppers? That's a specific question. And then I would more likely have to go in the direction of answering that question you ask. Whereas if you ask, Jesse, what are you going to teach us next? then I have the invitation to speak, but I have an open ticket as to where I turn next in the conversation. So take that as a bit of a guideline in asking yourself what question to ask the other. Do you want to ask something specific or something more general that leaves it open? And one of the reasons for this is that we want to step into a new paradigm of working together. We want to step into a paradigm where we trust the person before us and we trust the process in which we're working. This is the premise of the work that we're learning here, is a new paradigm where we put trust in the resources of the person, be it conscious or even more so their unconscious resources, and we trust in a new process of working together. And I've got 4 basic premises of what underlies this new paradigm of working together. And the first premise is this: we live in the realm of riddles. That's it. We live in the realm of riddles. And I stated this at the very beginning of the School of Love, saying we are in a place of puzzles. That is the nature of the Maya Matrix reality we are experiencing ourselves in. It is a realm of riddles. So don't try and get rid of riddles. Premise number 2. We live in a realm of answers and solutions. In other words, if we are open and seeking, we can come to new places in our understanding and new places in ourselves by wrestling with the riddles that life gives us, if we take them on. Premise number 3. We are our own best teachers. Our own best teachers, leaders, gurus, and healers. Our own best teachers, leaders, gurus, and healers. It's all within us. And to take on this premise is a shift in the center of authority from outside us to inside us. And it means we need to accept a greater responsibility to work with the resources we have within us. And this means getting active with these resources in new ways of communicating, so we can bring about this higher self-realization that we are our own best teachers, leaders, gurus, and healers. And the 4th premise is we can work, so we can support each other in this work. We can support this new activity and paradigm, and we basically need 2 things to do it. First, a skill set, which can be learned and practiced. And second, a certain measure of intuition. Intuition to know what skill to use when, such as what question to ask when, or when to hold silence and not say anything. That intuition can guide us in applying the skills which we can learn and practice. So in this new way of working together, we are moving away from the authority paradigm and putting the power into the hands of the people, of the person we are supporting by listening to with skillful love. It means we function more as a spiritual midwife to the higher part of the other. We are there to draw something out rather than be putting something in from our center of authority. So this is helping each other to move into a higher part of ourselves rather than keeping each other trapped in the same old ways. And as I like to say, if you keep doing what you're doing, you'll keep getting what you're getting. Plain and simple. If you keep doing what you're doing, you'll just keep getting what you're getting. Because what you put out is what you get back. Just want to take a moment to speak a little bit about the background of how I got interested and started in teaching these sorts of things as a spiritual teacher. Because I've been around spiritual communities since my late teens because I was interested in learning and growing. But I found a lot of people in these communities were not growing and were not interesting to speak with. There was a lot of talk and a lot of explaining of things, but not a lot of personal processing that fostered new growth. There was really a lack of personal processing, a shying away of personal processing, largely because people weren't really familiar and comfortable with that. So they were in the same old of just being a talking head and coming from their authority center and basically dictating to other people their thoughts rather than helping others to uncover their own thoughts. So after I did a training in spiritual psychotherapy, I realized a lot of the inertia and stagnation that I witnessed within people, well-meaning people in spiritual communities, could really be pinned down to the way people communicated, which means also the way they listened. There was still a lot of reliance on authority, and of course people will imitate what they see. If they see authoritarian figures, then they will imitate that and be like that. And this is not trusting in the premise that we all have our own riddles and puzzles to deal with out of ourselves. And so the shift in the paradigm is really more towards questions rather than answers. We should never forget the magnetic power of a question. You should always have lots of questions. Write them down. I've practiced this for several decades, and I love having questions. They can be annoying at times, sitting there unanswered. But I have observed that over time, through different means, they eventually do get answered. It may come all at once, or it may require getting little pieces of the puzzle here and there from various parts of the planet in a magical way that takes chaos and brings it into order, because that really is a fundamental power that we want to work with, is taking randomness and chaos and seeing order being brought together out of that. I experience that every time I go to the ocean here, which I've been going every couple of days. It's just so fantastic. The ocean is so powerful. But there's all this random water, right? It's just kind of slopping and sloshing here and there. But when it gets towards the land, then it comes together. There's a coherence and these powerful, powerful waves. It's the combination of all these water molecules that are higgledy-piggledy all of a sudden join force and roll in and crash on the beach. This is similar to the power that we can tap into in bringing our thought life into coherence. When I say thought life, our thinking, feeling, and will, so that holding a question, for example, within our thought life will have the force of an ocean that will direct things in a certain way. So, back to the point I was making about the lack of good processing within spiritual communities full of good people and so forth. People were talking at each other, but the level of listening was low. And I can get that at a family dinner anytime. Low level listening. But I didn't expect to suffer that in a spiritual community. I expected things to be on a higher level on the high road. So I began to take training. I took the training, the material I received in my psychotherapy training, and transformed it into a program that could be given out to lay public. Because to me, this was the way of the future. To learn, to hold space, to master space and a way for each other. And so I debuted this program through the Rudolf Steiner Center in Toronto and called it Skilled Friends, New Horizons in Relationships. And the name really captures the spirit of it. Because for me, we should be able to turn to our family and friends for skilled support when needing to process something. That I can turn to them as someone who will listen in a skilled way, rather than running to a psychologist or a psychotherapist, someone I have to pay, on the clock and all that. And perhaps they don't even listen. They just sit there and then, dispense their answers in an authoritarian way. But for us to become skilled friends, to me, this is one of the highest expressions of love in these busy modern times. Because the Maya has just got us running, it's got us so busy, our schedules are so full that we don't have time to process unless we become masters of space and time. And so as a skilled friend, we can step in and help with the shaping of space and time to allow soul substance, your soul substance, to be looked at, to be heard, to be worked with, to be alchemized, and so forth. Because one of the mottos I use, which is a twist on an old motto, perhaps you've heard, God helps those who help themselves. Well, I like to say, God helps those who hear themselves. God helps those that hear themselves. And are we hearing ourselves? Are we taking time to hear ourselves? And so the role of a skilled friend is to help the other to hear themselves. And this has become part of the spiritual boot camp training I've been running for several years now. It includes this element of skilled friends. And one of the reasons this is an important part of the spiritual boot camp is because of spiritual climate change. Yes, spiritual climate change. The environment in which we are growing spiritually has changed. Intentions have changed. The requirements to grow spiritually have changed from previous times, previous generations. In the old mysteries, initiation took place in temples and in the initiation centers and schools. Often they were cloistered and hidden. And people at times took substances that would put them into an altered state of consciousness. And then something would be imprinted on their subtle bodies while they were out of their body, out of their physical body. But now with the paradigm shift and the spiritual climate change, modern initiation takes place in the realm of society, in our bodies, and in full consciousness. At least this is the path that is being portrayed by the great late modern initiate Rudolf Steiner. That the social realm really is the new temple of initiation. The circumstances of our lives are what we have to work with in order to grow spiritually. The things that time and space deliver on our doorstep, there's the goods right there to work with to initiate yourself, to activate yourself, to evolve yourself. So having a skilled friend is like having a hierophant, someone who supports you in your initiation, your self-initiation, as you process the circumstances that you meet in the social realm. These circumstances I like to call the signature of the higher self. So if we listen to the circumstances, on the outside and listen to the meaning, the learning on the inside, this is how we build ourselves up into a higher self. And sometimes I refer to the skilled friend as a hired self. A hired self helping you to integrate with your higher self. So, as you can see, in modern times, communication is a central theme to our living and being. Communication. It is so much about good communication and having good technology to communicate with. And when it comes to technology, our technology, it comes from the same root word as technique. With good techniques, which is what being a skilled friend is about, we can take our level of communication to a much higher level. But first, let's look at what it is to be an unskilled friend, a sloppy friend. I mentioned that the premises of the work is that we live in the realm of riddles and a realm of solutions, and that we want people to be empowered in finding their own solutions. Well, sloppy friends aren't necessarily empowering you to find your own solutions. There's too many people that want to give you their solution. Matter of fact, it reminds me of a slogan I saw on the side of a truck. It made me laugh. Drove by. It was a truck for a chemical company. And it said, "Mr. Chemicals, we've got the solution for your problem." Mr. Chemicals, we've got the solution for your problem. And some people act and communicate that way all the time. They're like Mr. Chemicals, and they got the solution to your problem, as if they got the solution to everybody's problem. And this is quite common, and sometimes it's even referred to as mansplaining. Mansplaining is when a man assumes a woman wants his advice and gives it to her, and sometimes in a patronizing and presumptuous way. Mansplaining. It's, assuming he's got the solution. And of course, this is very egotistical. This is an expression of the ego that is overinflated, to think that it knows better than the other person what is right for them. Very egotistical, thinking you know what's better than the other person. You're not trusting in the resources of the other person. And you're not trusting in a new process where you can facilitate their searching for a solution from within themselves, which is much more empowering when you get the solution from within yourself and it resonates and it clicks. That's it. When it's coming from an external authority and you're getting it from 18 different directions, you really don't know what is right, and it just leads to confusion and is very disempowering as a result. Much better to allow a person to struggle and strive with the riddle that life has given them. Now, there may be times that we have information or knowledge that would be of benefit to another. I'm not saying that, there's not a time to pass information to someone else. For example, if someone is asking for directions on how to get somewhere, and you know how to get there, then of course you would tell them, go down that road and make a left, make a right, and that's completely appropriate. What we're talking about here really is more on the level of personal development, personal growth, personal issues, and so forth. But it's always best if you can give someone some information, ask them if you can give them some information before dumping it on them, or checking to see if they're interested in the information you have. For example, would you like me to give you the directions on how to get to the theater and where the parking is? Would you like me to tell you? Or checking to see if they have the time at the present moment for the information. For example, do you have time for me to tell you now? Or would it be better in the evening when there is more time? These sorts of checks and balances along the way to supporting each other are very helpful, so we're not coming from a presumptuous place and filling time and space with something that's not of value at that time. It's just cluttering things up, cluttering up people's minds, and burying the riddles with a lot of misinformation. And we know this is one of the challenges of our time, is dealing with misinformation or fake news or conspiracy theories and whatnot. It really is challenging our inner hygiene and clarity and so forth. It's great that we have access to so much information, but it's like on the physical level, you don't want to be putting things in your physical body that your physical body isn't going to use, that it doesn't need. It's just going to have to take time and energy to process stuff that's of no value. So one of the reasons it's important to consider approaching problems in this new way, where we support the other rather than dumping solutions on them, is that when we do that, we could be robbing the other person of a life-altering process. As I like to say, this mess is my mess. I earned it. Don't take it away from me. I just need support in seeing the message in the mess. Right? Too often we want to fix things, clean up other people's messes, but we're really robbing them of the potential of a life-evolving process. And I learned this when I worked as a Waldorf school teacher. Children need to cut their teeth by working through things. If you just give them an answer, they can just passively stick in their head. What have they got? They've just got an answer they've stuck in their head. They've been deprived of a growth process that striving and struggling with would provide them. Same thing with adults. When we jump in with our own answers, we not only steal the fire of the self of the other, we also steal away the fire of the situation that's there to help them to forge themselves, to support their evolution. So we really want to create an environment for the egubation of their ego that is more fiery than flat. We want something that's more fiery than flat. And if you observe how the stomach works, you should never really have a stomach that's too full, because the energy will go flat. It's better to have the stomach a little bit on the empty side, because then it can be more fiery. The fire of digestion can flare up, and that has beneficial effects throughout the entire systems, all the organism, when there's a bit of that fire rather than overloading it and flattening the energy. Same thing applies to the stomach of the mind, if you will. So we can already practice this new paradigm in our lives by observing how we work with others. This is going to be part of your love assignment this week, to observe how quick you are to give advice. Because the quicker you are to give advice to people, the more likely it's just a knee-jerk reaction and not something that you've thought through. You're not feeding a fire by making conversation. You're actually making it go flat, to dry up, and miss the opportunity of the moment. We want to create an environment where the seed of love even inside that other person can build itself from the inside out. This is trusting in the resources and trusting in the process, because a seed builds itself from the inside out, and likewise, ultimately, we have to build ourselves from the inside out. So we want to trust in the resources within the other person to unpack, given the time and space to do so. Not judging the other, thinking that they're incapable, and so forth. No negative judgments, but in a positive way, lovingly listening, what I like to call lovingly listening the insides into disclosure. Lovingly listening their insides into disclosure. So part of our journey here is learning, in learning how to do this, is to watch ourselves. Watch ourselves as a listener and learn about ourselves. If someone says something that triggers you, or otherwise causes you to react in some way, instead of saying no or reacting in some negative way, say oh. Don't say no, say oh. Hold it neutral, hold it out. Be a master of time and space. Give it a few beats. And then before speaking, ask yourself, do I need to say this? Do I need to say this now? Or maybe I should hold it until later. Maybe I just need to hold the thought and not say anything at all. Wait and see what manifests, and then decide if I need to speak. When it comes to these sorts of things, as I like to say, sometimes not only do you need willpower, but you also need won't power. I won't say any communication stoppers. And when you hold back with your won't power, the communication stoppers, then you will see and witness the magic of active listening. So what we're talking about here is an important shift in power, which is taking place in society in general, to serve the emergence of the universal human being. This paradigm shift is away from the hierarchy and authority to the form of a dyad. The form of a dyad. A dyad is two working together, one that works with the power of the pair. And this working of the power of the pair brings us to really the overarching motto of the Skilled Friends program, is our greatest gift is not in the wisdom we impart unto another, but in the skill with which we evoke wisdom from another. I'll repeat that. Our greatest gift is not in the wisdom we impart unto another, but in the skill with which we evoke the wisdom of another. The paradigm shift is a change in flow of direction. It really is a 180-degree turnaround in the flow of information, so it's coming out of you and not just stuff going into you. And we want to lovingly listen this into disclosure. When we talk about the power of the pair, we're actually returning to the very first thing I mentioned in the very first session of the first series of the School of Love. Duality. Duality. There, I said it twice because it is talking about the power of two. And the power of two is to produce a third. Something new comes out of the two, a third. And then another third. And then another third. Until you realize the humble simplicity of two has the power to produce infinite possibilities. This is what we're talking about in working in a dyad forum, and working one-to-one with someone, communicating on a high road, learning to lovingly listen with active questions. So in the case of a dyad, there is infinite possibilities to really prepare the way of our individual development. And where does that go? As I mentioned in the last session of Series 1, to the building of the one body of love. That individuals that are developed and blooming can come into harmony in the one body of love. And this is really the only true hope for humanity, is to come into harmony of the one body of love by developing ourselves fully, by unpacking ourselves fully. And this is what we're talking about here in Love is Listening, is helping each other to unpack ourselves fully. We're really looking at new frontiers in relationships, where if a person is skillfully living love, they can do so much to support the other in their evolution, their growth as a spiritual being having a human experience. What we're saying is we want to maximize our human experience. We don't want to avoid it, we want to maximize it, because it is the temple of initiation for modern times. This is why we're here. And that's the whole point, to live in time and space, to become masters of time and space, and then eventually to transcend time and space. We work with the drive of desire, the astral forces that comes from the stars and the cosmos that created us, and use it to return in our connection to this great reality. So we're going to look a bit more at technology, get into the practicalities, but I want to say, like any master would tell you, you want to master the technique and then you drop the technique, because you live the embodiment of the technique. And now the techniques we're going to talk about in this series are things to enhance our skills as a human being, and in particular as a social being. Human beings are social beings, and expressing social artistry is the highest form of art. To do this work we're talking about here, social artistry is the highest form of art, and all other arts are in a way a training to develop the sensitivity, the adeptness of working with straight line, curved line, color, proportion, all the things that an artist works with. They find their culmination in the realm of social artistry, being a skilled friend. And this is where love comes to its fullest expression, when we use skillful social artistry in our interactions. To fulfill the law of love, right? The purification, the purifying and the perfecting of our love. And fulfill the law of love, which is what? To treat others the way we would like to be treated. Plain and simple. I want to read a few quotes here, a few lines about listening. This one is, the first duty of love is to listen. That's from Paul Tillich. The first duty of love is to listen. Here's one from Catherine Doherty. I pick up these quotes along the way. I don't even remember where I got them, but been gathering these things for a couple of decades. With the gift of listening comes the gift of healing. I have seen that over and over again in my work. How listening leads to healing. Feeling heard leads to shifts in energy, which leads to healing. Here's one from Ralph Waldo Emerson. A friend is someone with whom I can be sincere. Before them, I may think aloud. And here's one from me. We are here to hear, from ear to ear. We've been given one mouth, but only 2 ears to hear. Here's one from Anonymous. Not that Anonymous, another Anonymous. Silence is an unending speech. Silence is saying something. Let it speak without interruption. And that's an important point about silence. Skillfully working with silence, because silence isn't just nothing. It's like saying that the sound between notes on a piano is nothing. But if I play a C and then a G, you have the interval between the two. It's not nothing, it's actually the contrast between what was said here and what was said there. The silence, the space, punctuates what's being said, and is part of our skill, part of our tools in our toolbox. So I've mentioned communication stoppers a couple times. Time to bring these out. People who have done the spiritual boot camp received this handout called the Top 40 Communication Stoppers, and this PDF is going to be included in the email, the School of Love email that'll go out with the link for the video. And when I did my spiritual psychotherapy training, the teacher, Dr. Barbara Forrest, she gave us a handout with 10 communication stoppers, and I thought, oh, there's a lot more than 10 that I've witnessed. So I have increased it up to 40, and as a matter of fact, there's more than 40. I keep adding to the list, even though it's just called the Top 40 Communication Stoppers. And this is something as part of your love assignment over the next week, is to read through this and to look at it like looking in a mirror and going, oh, wow, there I am. Oh, there's me. Yeah, I can see myself there. These communication stoppers are divided into 4 different categories. There's solution messages, right? Like Mr. Chemicals. We got the solution for your problem. People have solutions. Then there's the pseudo-supportive messages. They sound supportive, but they're not really. They're just pseudo-supportive. And then there are the cop-out messages. We're not really supporting, we're just copying out. And then there's put-down messages. So I'll give a few examples here just to whet your appetite and get you crying about how you've lived your life so far. Well, right off the bat, the top one is recommending, advising, loading with suggestions. This has got to be the number one because, yeah, we want to help, right? We want to help someone. So they got a problem. So we go into our memory bank of experiences and tell them what worked for us. Tell them what we read in a book. Tell them all the stuff that we know. We just want to be helpful, right? There's no criticism on your willingness or your good intention to help. But we're talking about a different way of working by, for example, asking the person a question rather than telling them an answer. I like to say, well, what do you think will work? What do you know? And often you find that they've already got ideas. They've perhaps been given ideas from other people, and they don't need you to add to the pile. They're trying to already sift and sort through other ideas they've got. So you can be there to help them sift and sort through what they already know and come to a knowing of what is the best solution for them, helping them to wrestle with the riddle of their circumstances. Of course, there's should statements, telling people you should do this and should do that, which really, I give examples, and I also explain a bit of what the negative consequence is of these different communication stoppers. Telling people they should do this and should do that, and then when they don't do it, that's going to leave this negative voice in their head. It's like, oh, I should be doing this, but I'm not doing this. So there's going to be this negative judgment over themselves as if they're not fulfilling something. They're not fulfilling your criterion of what they should be doing. And so it ultimately sets them up for a negative outlook on their own behavior. Then there's suggestions veiled as questions. Do you think you should perhaps give more time to your kids? It's a question, but you're really giving them a solution in this it's a veiled suggestion. Um, there's moralizing and preaching at people, which, for example, nice people don't do that. Nice girls don't do that sort of thing. This certainly is a good way to induce guilt and shame. How about asking a question? Do you think you should be doing that? What's your moral sense around that? Have you done this before? And what did it feel like after you did it? There's no end to the way you can support a person with questions without having to come in with a truckload of answers. So there's some examples of solution messages. Then there's the pseudo-supportive messages, where you're always confirming what a person is doing, like going, oh, yes, that's right. Yeah, what you're doing is right. Oh, now you've got it. And you're putting yourself really in a position of authority as a judge as to whether, someone's doing something right. And it's kind of like also, I've got one here on praising and approving, which, people like to be praised and approved, but it can become dysfunctional where a person becomes dependent on some external authority praising and approving and confirming, because the flip side of that is like, I didn't get praised that time. Nobody confirmed that. I'm missing that approval. And it doesn't empower them to be able to decide for themselves and judge for themselves. Yeah, I did a good job there. Good job. Pat myself on the back. I approved, I confirm, and so forth. So these pseudo-supportive messages can build up an imbalance in the social dynamic. This one I love. Me too. Me too statements. Even here, the social dynamic here, people could use the Skilled Friends program, because during meals and whatever, it's hard to talk because you get a sentence and a half out and people are like, oh, me too. They want to tell you their story. And you haven't even been able to unpack your story, and they're into their story. They've stolen your fire. They've stolen your opportunity to unpack and presence yourself through languaging, through words, and so forth. Because like little children, oh, me too, me too. So that's a situation where we really have to ask ourselves, should I share my experience with this person, or should I ask questions and hear more of their experience, and then maybe say, oh, maybe tomorrow I'll tell you about my similar experience. Much more hygienic. Or excusing things when things happen. Person has a problem, they have a struggle, and it's like, oh, these things happen. Sometimes just can't be helped. Things will look different in the morning. Or just get over it. Just get over it. Forget it. Let it go. Come on, get over it. That's not being helpful. That's being a bully. Or belittling problems. It can't be all that bad. Don't make it a big deal. Don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Well, no, this is my problem. This is my mess. Don't take away my mess. I earned it. And I want to know what the message is in the mess. And I want you to help me to hear the message in the mess. And then we're on to cop-out messages. I'm skipping through them here, just picking a few choice ones. Well, there's, withdrawing from a conversation with someone, like it's getting heated, or you're not working it through, and someone will say, well, it's just not open to discussion. Or you could just figure it out on your own. Or, okay, you win, I give up. or let's just forget it. I hate that. I like to debate things. I like to get into a good chew with someone. And if it gets a little bit heated, that just means the fire of the self is cooking. It's digesting. And you want a digestion partner. A skilled friend can be a digestion partner to get the fire going and really get it burning hot so you can burn through some of those really hard things inside that need to be melted down and looked at. So when somebody just withdraws, it feels like an assault. They're backing away, but it feels like something's being afflicted upon my soul because I don't have them there to work it through. Same with silent treatment. Or increasing the volume. There's another one. Increasing the volume and yelling as if that's going to get your message through any better. You can't hear me? My message isn't getting through, so maybe if I shout at you, then, you'll get it. So those are some cop-out messages. And then lastly, there's some put-down messages. Criticizing people for what they're doing. You know what your problem is? I'll tell you what your problem is. And then you go ahead and you judge the person, right? You criticize them for the way they are. Well, that's not going to open them up. When they feel criticized and judged, then they're going to close down to you. You're not going to get through to them any better by criticizing them. Much better to ask a question and say, what do you think of yourself? What do you think of the way you're acting in this situation? And being completely neutral, right? Instead of saying no, say oh, and go into that neutral space of holding. Oh, I see. Tell me more about it. Can you explain that to me? I'm not sure if I'm understanding it. Could you repeat it again? This is going to invite openness. And really is coming from a place of love. Because, let me get into this a bit now as we head towards the finish here, is to be a skilled friend rather than a sloppy friend. You're going to have to overcome yourself. You're going to have to overcome things in yourself. You're going to become, what they say, more selfless. Which, as I mentioned, I think last week, to be selfless, you have to be a strong self. Because you have to in some way die to certain aspects of your being. We need to overcome our egotism in order for our ego to be able to function in a healthy manner for which it's designed, and to be masters of time and space, quality time and space. But this has to be done out of freedom, of course, and it has to come out of recognizing the egotism that causes us to be a sloppy friend. So to show up as a strong ego, but a selfless ego, this is really the function. Because the ego is the lover. The egoic self is the lover. But not only is it the lover, it is the listener. It's that part of you that listens. Not your ears, not your brain, not any of your physical organs. Although I'm going to talk a bit in a moment about listening as a full body experience. But the ego is ultimately the part that is the lover and the listener, and wants to be a loving listener. And as we develop our egoic nature, we will have the ability to be a loving listener. So one aspect that needs to be worked with in our ego development is overcoming our sympathies and antipathies. The sympathies and antipathies that run the show, and these are tied into our desires. I desire this, I don't desire that. I have sympathy for this, I don't have sympathy for that. It's our personal proclivities, our likes and our dislikes, things we're open to and closed to, that form a kind of prejudice in our inner life that distorts our seeing what is truly going on in front of us. We're not able to see or hear straight until we overcome these sympathies and antipathies that run the show and filter. So as I explained in Series 1, we need to die to that. How you dying? How you dying? We need to die, let certain aspects die, so something of a higher self can blossom forth from the seed of love that is within us. And this in itself is an act of love, to die for the other. And it leads from being governed by our sympathies and antipathies that we've identified ourselves with egotistically, and therefore have governed our inner life, and to be able to step into true empathy. Empathy. Yeah. You should get that tattooed on your forehead. Empathy. So you see it when you look in the mirror, and other people see it when they look at you. Because empathy is really the portal beyond the self, the lower self, the smaller self. When we grow from sympathy and antipathy, and also apathy, which is not caring at all, into empathy, then that becomes the portal beyond the self into a much larger reality. We can experience a much larger reality than the eggshell of the ego. And this dying to self is love. Love that leads to true learning. Therefore, we come to this logical conclusion that a true living of love is the only way to true learning. And this will be looked at more closely in the next session. Love is learning. Just to touch on how to listen more deeply. One way to listen more deeply is to make listening a full body experience. To treat your whole being as an ear. Because it is, in a way, our field, our vibrational field, is picking up on many, many different frequencies and messages in the environment, including what's coming from another. So we can tune in on many different levels. Even being able to look at a person can give us much more information than, like, for example, right now I can't see any of you, so I don't know whether you're twiddling your thumbs or your eyes are closed or what. But, being able to use as much of our physical body as possible when listening and shaping the quality of time and space that we hold with a person. That means that we don't want to be doing other things with our beingness, but just to listen when it's time to listen. So I advise to not have these kinds of conversations with people while driving a car, when trying to listen deeply to another, because you're hurtling along a highway with this heavy piece of machinery, or driving through downtown traffic, and you're responsible for your and others' lives. So how can you listen deeply when you're trying to keep your eyes on the road? So you don't do it while driving, don't do it while eating, or making dinner, or even making love. If you're listening as a full body experience, you want to put even going out for a walk. I find, I'm not able to look into a person's face so much. While walking, the body's doing something else. So if we're going to really take in the subtleties that another person is expressing, we want to hold a protective space, because something's going to emerge from the depths when it's a held protective space. As I learned in my training, the greatest cargoes of life come in over quiet seas. So when we hold those quiet seas, it's going to let things emerge. Like last week, out on the ocean in a boat, it was quiet, and this huge humpback whale emerges out of the quiet seas. The great cargoes of life will come up in quiet seas. One could say the same thing about listening if there's other things going on in your body. If you're digesting a big meal, or you're drinking alcohol, or consuming mind-altering substances. If you're high, you're not necessarily in your body and able to listen to the depths. Even being caffeinated can change your ability to remain inwardly quiet and listen deeply. I notice how people's personalities change when they get heavily caffeinated. They can't listen, and they've got lots of Me Too statements flying out. They talk over you. It's a mess. Sloppy friends. Because it is not only about listening to what a person is saying, but also to what they're not saying. That's how you can serve, is also listening to what they're not saying, what's in the environment there, what is in the space that isn't being articulated but needs to be articulated. That's why you are there. You're there as a midwife to bring that which is unmanifest into the manifestation. So this is where we're going, to increase our ability to put love into action, to love with skill, to love with intuition. In the next lesson, we are going to go deeper into understanding the relationship of love and learning. The session is called Love is Learning. And this takes us into some of the deepest questions of human existence. The nature of our inner life and the relationship to the outer world. The nature of our inner life and the relationship to the outer world. And where love plays a part. Where love plays a bridge. And this is more than poetic stuff. This is more than philosophical stuff. This is the queen of all subjects. Epistemology, the science of knowing itself, how we acquire knowledge. And this is very exciting, as it is part of our journey to tapping the source, tapping our genius, and the development of our omnidirectional cognition, which is really the only thing that is going to set us free. Everything else is what I call faux freedom. Faux freedom, and we don't want to settle for faux freedom. So back to the title of this session. Love is listening. Why is love about listening? Because when you are listening to the other, truly deeply listening to the other, it's not about you. It's about getting you out of the way so you can focus on the them. It is an act of selflessness. It is something of a mini death, where you die to self so you can create time and space to hold the other. You hold the other in the time and space you've created by dying to yourself. And of course, there's a benefit to doing this. You become a master of time and space, and you gain greater strength as a self-aware, egoic being. You get a greater handle on time and space, and this is part of your initiation and preparation to transcend time and space. So, for the love assignment this week, love is listening. The first thing will be to review the list of the top 40 communication stoppers. And when you read it, you'll see that there's more than 40. There's extra, 50 or more. And there's also space where you can put in some of your own. You may discover some more communication stoppers that you can put on the sheet or send to me, and I can add to the sheet. But as you read through it, it's like looking in a mirror, recognizing your own habits and traits, and see where you can do better to tighten up your listening and facilitation of others in processing. Practice seeing how quickly you catch yourself doing a communication stopper, acknowledge it, even maybe apologize for it, and switch into active listening and asking general questions. And the second love assignment is practice asking questions of people. And instead of specific questions, which tends to feed your own curiosity and need for knowledge, try asking more general, open-ended questions and see where the other person goes with that. You want your questions to serve the other's unpacking rather than serving yourself and your own need for knowledge. Just going to play a little bit of flute to close things out. And then I think there's a campfire tonight. Take my flute on over to the campfire. All right. A little bit of flute from the rich coast of Costa Rica. Well, I think I'm warmed up for the campfire.